The bottom 2 inches of the celery you bought last week are sitting on your cutting board right now. You cut the stalks off, and you are about to drop that base in the bin. Do not. That base has a growing point at its center, a dense cluster of cells the plant uses to produce new growth. And if you set it in a shallow dish of water on a windowsill for 5 days, new celery stalks will be pushing up from it. If you then plant it in the ground, it will grow on and produce for the rest of the season. The same is true for the base of your romaine lettuce, the green tops cut from your carrots, the root end of your green onions, the heel of your garlic bulb, the cut end of a sweet potato, and a dozen other things that leave your kitchen every week as waste. You have been throwing away plants that were still alive. Every one of them was still trying to grow, and you put it in the bin before it could. This is not a trick. Regrowing food from kitchen scraps is one of the oldest practices in any kitchen garden. The same principle that governed how seeds were saved and cuttings were taken and divided, plants were replanted long before the seed catalog existed and before the nursery was somewhere you could drive to. The part you were going to discard contains the biology the plant needs to continue. The growing cells are still alive. The stored energy in the root end or the base is still there. All you are doing is giving that biology a place to do what it was already trying to do before you dropped it in the bin. But before I continue, I just want to say I have launched my official Amish Homestead Guide. It will help you with everything from the garden and the orchard to the kitchen, the cellar, and the everyday keeping of a house, the same methods that were handed down through our family and that I share here. You can find it in the description below. Not only will the guide teach you some new tips and tricks, it will also directly support the channel. So thank you, and let us begin. I am Levi Yoder. I was raised plain here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and the kitchen garden I grew up working in produced most of what it planted from what it had already grown. My grandmother saved seeds every autumn, and she also saved what most people today would call kitchen scraps. The base of a head of cabbage that had bolted went back into the ground to produce seed for the following year. The tops cut from beets went into a flat of damp sand to root and were transplanted in spring. The end of a bunch of green onions used down to the white part went into a cup of water on the windowsill and was cutting again within the week. She did not think of any of this as regrowing in the way people talk about it now. She thought of it as not wasting a plant that still had something to give. Nothing with a growing point left that kitchen as finished. I am going to show you which scraps regrow reliably, which ones work differently from what most people expect, and exactly what each one needs to go from your cutting board back into productive ground. Green onions first, because they are the fastest and the result will convince you immediately that everything else I am about to show you is worth trying. Cut the green tops from your green onions and leave the white root end with about an inch of the white stem above it. Set the root ends upright in a small glass, with just enough water to cover the roots without submerging the stem. Put the glass on a bright windowsill. Within 3 days, new green growth will be rising from the tops. Within a week, you will be cutting from them again already. You can keep a glass of regrowing green onions on the windowsill continuously for months, harvesting the tops and letting them regrow before the root end eventually exhausts itself. When regrowth slows, plant the root end in the garden, and it will keep going. My grandmother kept a cup of green onion roots on the kitchen windowsill from March through October and never bought green onions at the market in those months. Celery is the next one, and it demonstrates the principle most visibly. When you cut the stalks from a bunch of celery, the base that remains is a compressed stem with the growing point at its center. Cut away the lower inch of the base to expose a clean surface. Then set the base cut side up in a shallow bowl with about ½ inch of water. Change the water every 2 days. Within a week, you will see new pale green leaves pushing up from the center of the base. Within 2 weeks, there will be recognizable small celery stalks. At that point, the base has developed enough new root growth on its outer surface to be planted in the garden with the growing point just above soil level. Water it in and give it partial shade for the first week. What you will have, by midsummer, is a full celery plant, producing harvestable stalks, grown from what was the bottom of a grocery store bunch. Romaine lettuce and other head lettuces regrow the same way from the cut base, though they do not produce a full second head. What they produce is loose leaf growth from the center of the base, harvestable for salad, through several weeks of regrowth. Cut the base to about 2 inches, set it in shallow water, and harvest the new leaves as they reach cutting size. It is not the same volume as the original head, but it is real food from what was otherwise done. Carrot tops are different from the others here, because you cannot regrow a carrot from its cut top. The carrot is the storage root, and once it is harvested, it will not regenerate from the severed end. What the green tops will do, planted in damp soil with the cut end down, is produce a lush, ferny plant that flowers through the summer and sets seed in the autumn. Carrot seed, saved from your own plants and grown in your own soil over several generations, adapts slowly to your specific conditions and eventually outperforms any commercial seed for that climate and that soil. My grandfather saved carrot seed for 30 years, and by the end of it, he had a strain specific to this ground in a way no catalog variety could replicate. The carrot top you are about to discard is the beginning of that process if you give it the chance to finish. Sweet potatoes are among the most productive scraps to regrow, and the method is specific enough to explain carefully. A sweet potato will produce slips, which are the shoots that grow into new plants. If you suspend it halfway in water with toothpicks pressed into the sides to hold it at the right depth, bottom half submerged and top half in air. Within 2 to 3 weeks, slips will emerge from the top half. When a slip is 4 to 6 inches long, twist it off cleanly, set it in a glass of water until it develops roots of its own, which takes about a week, and then plant it in the garden. One sweet potato can produce 8 to 12 slips over the course of a few weeks. Each slip becomes a productive plant that will yield several pounds of sweet potatoes by autumn. The grocery store sweet potato costs you $1. The slips it produces are the equivalent of 8 to 12 nursery transplants. Garlic is perhaps the most commonly regrown kitchen scrap, and also the most commonly done wrong. A single clove planted in the ground in autumn will produce a full bulb the following summer, but most people who try this either plant it too shallow or at the wrong time of year and wonder why it did not work. The key is timing and depth. Plant individual cloves in October or November, pointed end up, 2 inches deep and 6 inches apart. They will develop roots through autumn and winter and send up green shoots in early spring. By midsummer, the tops will die back, signaling the bulb is ready to harvest. Each clove becomes a full bulb of 8 to 12 cloves. A pound of garlic purchased in autumn becomes 8 to 10 pounds, harvested the following summer, grown from what you were going to use in the kitchen anyway. Ginger is the one most people have not tried, and it produces results out of proportion to the effort. A piece of fresh ginger root with at least one visible growth bud. The slightly raised lighter colored nodes on the surface can be planted in a pot or in the garden, in a warm spot with partial shade. The growth bud will send up a shoot within a few weeks, and the plant will expand underground through the growing season. Dig it up in late autumn, and the single piece you planted has multiplied into a substantial root mass. What you planted from the kitchen becomes the harvest, and the harvest supplies the kitchen the following year. The logic that connects all of these is the same logic that governed every generation of kitchen gardening before ours. A plant is not finished when you have taken what you immediately needed from it. The growing point is still alive. The stored energy in the root end, or the compressed base, is still there. The biology that makes the plant capable of producing food has not been used up by the fact that you took the harvestable part. What you are discarding when you drop a celery base, or a garlic heel, or a green onion root in the bin is a living plant in the middle of its productive life, not at the end of it. The seed catalog and the nursery tray are recent arrivals in the history of growing food, and they arrived with a set of habits that broke the older conversation between the kitchen and the garden. Before them, almost nothing with a growing point moved from the kitchen to the waste. The kitchen fed the garden the way the garden fed the kitchen continuously, without a gap, with nothing left that could still be useful. Getting back to that is not a project. It is a shift in how you look at what is in your hand before you throw it away. Tell me in the comments which of these you are going to try first, and which ones you have already been doing, and tell me your county and your state while you are there. The climate you are in changes what is practical green onions and garlic work anywhere, but sweet potato slips need real warmth, and ginger needs a long growing season, and I always want to know what people are working with in different parts of the country. I read every single one. Next time, I am going to show you how my grandmother selected and saved seeds from the best performing plants in this garden every autumn. The specific method that produces seed, adapted to your soil and your climate, over several generations of selection, and why the seeds you save from your own garden eventually outperform any variety you can buy from a catalog for your specific conditions, because those seeds have never grown anywhere else and have been adapting to your ground since the first year you planted them. The people who built this country with their own two hands knew things we are only now just beginning to truly remember.